Hello there, folks. Welcome into today's video. Palantir CEO out with some pretty big comments in relation to how their AI product's going and many other various things in this interview. So looking forward to getting into this one, sharing my perspectives and opinions. Appreciate everybody joining me as always. Thanks so much for being here, folks. Thank you for being subscribed. We're going to hit a new all-time high subscribers today, so I appreciate each and every one of you. And let's just jump straight into this.
Focus in DC is one, to basically embarrass other people in AI to work with the U.S. government. It's like, we're doing very well here. You should also get involved.
All right, so you're kicking off this inaugural summit today. You have a lot of U.S. leaders here in government and defense and other areas of the government. Right now today, with so much focus on AI and the potential of AI, what is Palantir's focus when it comes to its work with the U.S. government?
Well, there are two things we're working on. One is Palantir related, but arguably even more importantly, the U.S. has every major provider of AI, which is in every other industrial revolution, you've had a just diversity of countries that have had the talent and the products. In this revolution, they're really all in America. So how do we get the U.S. government to use innovation from providers? Very few of these providers work closely or closely enough with the U.S. government. Now, in part, that's because many of these providers have had a somewhat timid view of helping the U.S. government. The Silicon Valley motto has been, I get rich, you get nothing. And they've obviously often extended that to the U.S. government. So my focus and our focus in D.C. is one, to basically embarrass other people in AI to work with the U.S. government. It's like, we're doing very well here. You should also get involved. To talk to legislators, to explain to them that way too few of our dollars are being spent on AI. Palantir is one of, I think, the first company since the 50s that has produced government products that are in high demand commercially. So how do we get more companies that have commercially available products, meaning products that are proven?
All right, so folks, this is extremely important, okay? Extremely important. If you really want to understand how important is a company like Palantir, okay, in the AI market over time, here's the deal, okay? Look at the lineup that Alex Karp, Palantir CEO, was with. He was with Elon Musk, Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, right? The Tesla CEO, Microsoft CEO, Jensen Huang, obviously the NVIDIA CEO, Zuck, Meta CEO, Sam Altman, which is the CEO of OpenAI, right? Sundar Pichai, which is Google McDougal's CEO, Bill Gates, I don't think I need an introduction for him, right? You got this gentleman who I can never pronounce his name right, but he's the IBM CEO, okay? And IBM actually is going to be a player in AI, believe it or not. And I know old Big Blue, I've been actually doing some research on them recently. And then you got Eric Schmidt, who is certainly the former CEO of Google McDougal, right? Yeah, you're not going to have all those folks in one room unless they're all extremely important and vital to kind of the future of AI. And so the fact that Alex Karp is in there with those guys is big, okay? Big.
In a competitive environment into the U.S.
And by the way, I don't want this to be lost on folks, but there was a part he just mentioned where he thinks the government's not spending nearly enough on AI. So he wants to see the government obviously ramp up AI spending aggressively, it sounds like.
And how do we share knowledge? So that's the part that we're doing here. We have a lot of clients, many of which are sensitive, and they get to talk to each other here about what they're doing, what's worked, and what's not.
All right, we'll talk more about your clients in just a bit. I do want to ask you, just a few days ago, you were in Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's AI meeting. It was a closed-door meeting. The press and the public not in the room, not allowed in the room. A lot of big-name tech leaders were there. We're talking Bill Gates, Sundar Pichai, Mark Zuckerberg. What was said there? Can you give us your takeaway? The headlines were it was all about regulating AI and government regulation. And also, I want to ask you, do you think the public should have been allowed in the room?
Well, by the way, I can't remember if Alex Karp even addresses that. Should the public be allowed in the room? I think there should have been cameras in the room for some things other than just this quick little photo op. I don't think they should have had to take questions or anything like that, but I think that would have been great to just have some cameras in that room, right? And just hear the discussions. I think, imagine the views that would have gotten. Like, it would have seemed like a boring subject, but I'm just telling you, could you imagine the views that would have gotten with all those people in one room and the discussions that would have gone on? Oh my gosh.
So the overarching discussion was, how do you advance artificial intelligence, meaning how do we allow especially commercial enterprises in America to adopt AI, develop AI, and provide it to the U.S. government and enterprise while simultaneously mitigating some of the obvious risks of AI. Namely, one, we don't know where the road is going and what happens if generative AI becomes so powerful that, in fact, it's a risk to humankind. Okay, so that is a real issue, and there's a lot of consensus that we have to have some way of mitigating the risk. Then there are other discussions of, on the way there, how do you have artificial intelligence that has governance, guardrails, can prove that it's not discriminatory? And then there's the issue I'm passionate about is, given the risks, we also have to model as one of the greatest risks that our adversaries, namely Russia or China, develop tools that are vastly superior to ours and change the world order. I thought it was a very, very productive discussion. I guess it's an unpopular view that occasionally you have to begin discussions in private, but it is my view. And I'm sure at some point these discussions will be open and no legislation will happen. But in the end, we all have to come in there and say, this is what I really believe. It's already very hard to get people to show up and kind of go naked, but they're not going to go naked in public with public scrutiny. And there's a super heterogeneous group of people there, from union leaders to tech leaders. Among tech leaders, you have kind of more corporate-y people, then you have the freak show.
You're referring to yourself, but self-deprecation understood. Yeah. I do want to ask you about one thing. We just showed some video of you sitting next to Elon Musk, and you said, how do you get to use AI in a way that doesn't hurt humanity? That's a question that he's been wrestling with. He's been talking about the dangers of AI. So were there in-depth discussions about how to use AI responsibly, as you mentioned, so it's not discriminatory, so it doesn't actually hurt humanity? Yeah,
that's what we discussed, and there were
do you have details? Are there some details you can share?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what I said, which is I said, look, there are two camps. There's those that think AI is safe and those that think it's dangerous. And I'm in a third camp, which is it is dangerous. And if we don't actually work on it, our adversaries will, and we will lose all of our human rights. That was my position. And I think that is the.
You could tell Alex Karp's mindset's so different than certainly probably anybody else in that room, because obviously Palantir's work with the government over the years and on the battlefield and everything that goes on there. He just has a very different view of competition, the world. If we're not the leaders in the United States of America, Europe's certainly not going to lead, because we know Europe's just not very forward thinking in regards to a lot of these products. So then it would end up being, maybe countries leading that you really don't want to be leading in a space that could be seen as very dangerous over time, which is AI, right?
Is what am I doing in DC? What am I doing every day, both as an individual and as the co-founder and leader of Palantir, is pushing America to adopt AI with governance responsibly in the commercial context. What does governance mean? Governance means you can look at the output of a large language model or the inputs into algorithms and say, is this something that protects our data, protects our health records, make sure they're not being used in a discriminatory way? And on the battlefield, is there some human supervision in the chain where we make lethal decisions? And where does that data come from? Who controls it? Who can ratchet this back? Who can ratchet this up? And do we have superiority that is so great that our adversaries are afraid to attack us? The standard for the U.S. can't be parity, because we're basically benevolent actors in the world, despite discrimination, certainly from the comparative perspective, maybe the only benevolent actors. And the best way to make sure that we have a safe world is to make sure that our adversaries know that our weapons are far superior to theirs. That's what I'm interested in.
I want to ask you more about the meeting. Did you have a chance to speak directly with Senate Majority Leader Schumer? And do we need an AI czar, Department of AI regulation, or something like that?
We are going to have regulation, and and some forms of regulation I support. Like what the form of regulation I support is we must, the U.S. as leaders, control the risk to our civilization of out-of-control rogue AI. So I am doing this in public and in private. And what I can tell you is I'm telling you exactly what I tell people in private, whether it's Senator Schumer or leaders of the world or my employees or people abroad, whoever I'm meeting, I am telling you the same thing. So you can be rest assured that you're hearing in public what I said in private. And what I say in public and in private is there's a real risk here. But the upside is that America will outperform all other Western countries because we produce the technology, we have legal structures that allow us to implement it, and we have the best talent, and we're the most innovative. On the military context, we are poised to win, but we have to make sure we actually win when we're poised to win. It's not the same thing. And that's what I'm saying in public and in private.
So, Alex, we have a question for you from the New York Stock Exchange.
Alex, it's Sarah Eisen. It's great to hear this color and the philosophy behind how we think about AI and regulation. I'm curious, though, what it's going to mean for your business, because there has been a lot of enthusiasm and excitement in the market.
Thank you. These are the questions I like. Okay, this is my favorite part.
Around Palantir as an AI play, what does growth look like from governments, from commercial, from international, as we adopt generative AI?
I think for us and for everyone, what you're going to see is radical growth in the U.S., slower growth in Europe.
Radical growth in the U.S. So that sounds pretty insane. That's a great word choice. You don't usually hear that. I've been in the market 15 years. You don't usually hear CEOs say radical growth, but that's what he feels like in the United States. Slow growth in Europe. Okay.
In the U.S. because people are going to adopt the best, most robust, most useful technologies, and very quickly. What you're going to see in the market, and then I'll get to us, is you're going to see in the market, you've had a massive interest in AI. Many of these products deliver poetry and will allow me to write an essay maybe I know nothing about. The products that are going to do well in the sense that people are going to pay for them are going to have output differential. So you're going to change the margins of a business. You're going to rebuild a supply chain. You're going to move a company from individual point-based company to a portfolio way of managing it.
I love that. I love that answer, right? Because that, no disrespect to obviously ChatGPT and all these other competing products and things like that. I agree with Karp. Okay, you can write an essay. Cool if you're a school student or something like that, right? And act like you know something you don't know. But at the end of the day, when it comes to business, we need to change the margins of the business. We need to get cost out of the business. We need to be more profitable. We need to find more ways to make money from our current client list and our data we have, which these companies collect enormous amounts of data, especially the bigger the company, right? That's what we need as a company. And that's what Palantir.
And those companies are going to succeed in the U.S. market. How are we doing? It's very early days, and you don't want to be out there being too optimistic, and we're being very careful to kind of move slower than we could, but we de facto cannot keep up with demand for our AIP product. We built these precursors.
We cannot keep up with demand for our AIP product. Interesting comment, and one of the best, certainly, things I could ever hear, right? We cannot keep up with demand of our AIP product. And you might say, well, they haven't really figured out how to monetize that yet, or at least they hadn't as of the last conference call, right? Well, they certainly can over time. At the end of the day, for Palantir, it's just about them being in relationships with all these different customers and building out, potential $20 million, $50 million, $100 million deals. That's what it's all about. And it's hard to do that if you don't have a relationship. So the fact that just everybody's kind of running over themselves to obviously experiment and try out Palantir's AIP product is definitely very, very good.
Technologies that are not understood yet, but the clients understand them because they are asking, how do I work with a large language model in a safe way, a governed way, where I can make them more precise and change the underlying dynamics of my business within days. And what we've seen is in the last month a 50% increase in people using our AIP product in a month. So, the other thing about...
Can I interrupt you, Alex, for 1 second? We have another question for you from the New York Stock Exchange. I want to get some of our anchor questions in as well.
Hey, Alex.
Yes,
Alex, it's David Faber. I just want to follow up on that. In terms of productivity and what's going to be available to the enterprise as a result of the adoption that you're talking about. One step down from threat to humanity, but what about threat to workers? Where are you in terms of how many jobs will be replaced as opposed to potentially simply aided to go work on higher end things?
This is a super important question. Typically technology is misaligned with the worker. And so there's obviously a lot of concern among working men and women that, radical increase in technological development will lead to a decrease in jobs and put pressure on their salaries. I think AI incorrectly implemented. So not long ago, we had 1% of the U.S. hospital care market. Now we have 16%. What is going on with this radical increase? We're making doctors and nurses more effective. We're making factory workers more effective. By the way, one of the most important attributes of AI that's not been discovered yet and will be discovered is you can take manufacturing that maybe has been culturally specific to Japan or Korea, and we have one company that is a Japanese company producing a highly technical product in America, just like they produce it in Japan with American workers. And why can they do that? Because through enhanced software, algorithms, and AI, we can control the manufacturing environment for Americans as if it was Japan. That means American work. So then you get the agility, creativity, ingenuity of America with methodologies we've not been able to produce here in the largest and most important market in the world. So I think, and this is a message that's going to take, we actually have to show rather than tell, because workers are going to be skeptical of it, but it's actually true.
All right, before we go on to the Steve Eisman video here, let me wrap up thoughts around Palantir and the stock price specifically, right? So obviously we didn't talk about the stock price in regards to this one, okay? So I believe personally what is going on with Palantir stock price, which remember, this stock started the year at like $5 to $6 range, which is just laughable, right? Then obviously it went on an absolute beast run. We touched around $20, right? Now we're sitting at about $14 here today, right? I believe in regards to stock price, what has happened here recently is very, very healthy. You don't just go up in a straight line or something like that, right? I think this has been a really nice pullback, consolidation. You're giving people time. The people that, are just kind of a little more of the short-term crowd, you're giving them plenty of time to get out of the stock, to cash out. You're giving people time to buy the stock who want to buy the stock but didn't want to buy it when it was just up in a straight line, when it went from $6 to $20, right? Now we're getting a several month time span to kind of buy it at much lower ranges. So this is one of the most healthy moves you can ever imagine for a stock, and this is usually something you like to see, right? And then whenever Palantir comes out with some more exciting stuff, then you'll see the stock make another big upward move. Is that an earnings beat? Is that, for sure S&P 500 inclusion? Something along those lines would be the next thing to get Palantir obviously back to, let's say, $20 or above. It's like, oh, S&P 500 inclusion's coming, or wow, did you see Palantir just killed it when it comes to revenue or their guidance or amount of customers or something like that. Until that happens, we'll kind of just be in this, let's just call it chilling range of kind of like consolidation here, okay? Palantir CEO Alex Karp out in a brand new interview I want to react to, give my opinion, perspective on this one here today, folks. It's a one video only to react to in this one. And then afterward, we'll talk about Palantir stock price. I know, obviously, Palantir stock price had a tremendous year. It's shown some real weakness recently. And so I want to kind of give my views on kind of like the next 6 to 12 months in regards to Palantir stock price in this video as well. So appreciate everybody joining me as always. I want to jump straight into this. Thanks for being here, folks. Thanks for being subscribed. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump into this. By the way, new all-time high subscribers. I appreciate each and every one of you.
Just in the chair right now, he was the first major executive of a Western company to go to Kyiv and meet with Zelensky after the Russian invasion.
I don't know what was with Karp at the beginning of the interview. He's like, what happened? The board of directors told him he had to cut his hair, or what happened there? Man, it was looking like the man was depressed for a minute.
He joins us live now from Palantir's Software Government Conference Summit in D.C. Alex, thank you for coming.
It's a delight to be here, as always.
Thank you. What do you, I have to right off the bat. What do you make of not just Senator Rand Paul, but many others in Congress digging in their heels over funding for Ukraine? This looks like a real stalemate, and we've got 8 days before the government loses funding.
Well, look, we live in a country where we have First Amendment rights. I'm kind of a First Amendment rights zealot. I think everyone should express their opinion. My opinion is that you create peace through technological superiority. We have to show the rest of the world, especially our adversaries, but also our allies, that we can deliver the most important and powerful weapon systems to allies and project power into regions that are dangerous. And, obviously, look, I've spent 20 years with people disagreeing with me on supporting the DOD in Silicon Valley, where it's not popular. And, of course, there are some people who think that you will make the world safer.
Just in case there's anybody watching this that doesn't know what the DoD is, it's the Department of Defense.
Through, not confronting our adversaries, and it's a legitimate position. I disagree with it.
On the battlefield, just so people understand what Palantir is able to do there, you've been key in the target coordination cycle, so to speak. You help the Ukrainians find and track the target, whether that's a Russian tank column or a weapons depot, and then the decision to act is made by humans on the ground. In days gone by, that cycle took hours. With Palantir's engagement, it takes, 2 to 4 minutes. A lot of GOP members are China hawks. What's the likelihood that the success Ukraine has had using Palantir technology might have a chilling effect on China as it mulls positions on how to deal with Taiwan? I mean, as a deterrence, you guys could be that.
Well, obviously we have a massive presence in the U.S. government, most of which we can't talk about. What I think will be a deterrent to China.
Okay, hold on. Hold your horses for just a moment, okay? As somebody that's, obviously very bullish on Palantir's shareholder, let me be very clear, okay? Just because of Palantir's technology does not mean China is going to give, let's call it, two thoughts about Taiwan. I'll tell you what is, okay? Nuclear submarines that are all over the world that are United States property. I think that gives them a little should we go into Taiwan? What about the best military in the world by far and away? Oh, I think that gives them a little thought, okay? What about the best fighter jets in the world? What about by far and away the best Air Force in the world? I think that these are things that maybe give, what about the most aircraft carriers? I think these are all things that maybe give China a little second thoughts about Taiwan. Okay, I wish I could say, oh, it's Palantir's technology that's giving them second thoughts. So believe me, it's a whole lot more serious than that, folks. Okay, a whole lot more serious. Jeez, come on, man.
Is to the extent America, which really has nearly every company in the AI software field that is world-leading, transformative, these technologies have to be made available for the DoD. Currently, there's no requirement of tech companies in the West to supply our technology to our DoD. We need to change that. We need to reform the culture of Silicon Valley so that people enthusiastically support deterrent efforts. And we need to limit the export of these technologies to our adversaries. So, I have my own myopic interests of supporting our nearly bombastic growth in U.S. commercial. But what I care about as a citizen is we are in most industrial revolutions, people participate relatively evenly.
So he mentions, that whatever term he just used, but ridiculous, basically, growth in U.S. commercial. He just casually mentioned that, right? Here's my thing about that. Okay, is that a forward-looking statement? Because here's what I'm thinking, right? Palantir's growth in the commercial market has been good, certainly, but I wouldn't say it's whatever term he just used there, which is basically a term means ridiculous, okay? So is there something CARP's seeing, maybe with AIP, with levels of customer interest from the commercial side right now, that is, let's just call it ridiculous growth that's coming, okay? So those are just kind of things I pick up on and just trying to see what's going on there. So anyways, don't want to draw too many conclusions from that, but that is an interesting statement he just brought up there. I don't know if anybody else caught that.
Of these technologies to our adversaries. So, I have my own myopic interests of supporting our.
Where was it? Right
DoD. Currently, there's no requirement of tech companies in the West to supply our technology to our DoD. We need to change that. We need to reform the culture of Silicon Valley so that people enthusiastically support deterrent efforts. And we need to limit the export of these technologies to our adversaries. So, I have my own myopic interests of supporting our nearly bombastic growth in U.S. commercial. But what I care about as a citizen is we are in most industrial revolutions, people participate relatively evenly according to GDP. And this revolution is really the U.S. and no other country in the world. How do we maintain the military superiority that is great as our intellectual and moral superiority vis-a-vis our adversaries? And we do that by limiting exports, forcing all tech companies to sell any product they develop to the DoD, and by all of us engaging in helping our Defense Department, both intellectually, philosophically, and of course, with our technologies that can and should be used as weapons of war to scare the bejeebers out of our adversaries.
Well, that would be Russia, too. And you at Palantir absolutely do not do business with Russia or China. But what is the danger of not supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia, whether it's with your battlefield technology or something else?
Well, I mean, look, the obviously, I believe that any sign of weakness will beget violence, danger, both more danger in Europe and more danger all across the globe. So, we believe this at Palantir. It's not just that we sell to the DoD. It's not just that our products are crucial to national security across the Western world. We are a belief-driven organization. So it's not surprising that I believe that. It's also not surprising that European countries, one of the things that is not well known, but the European countries that border Russia, they believe this. So typically people who are in a dangerous border or perceive the danger have clear minds on this. But, we are a diverse country politically, and we have to bring the argument to our peers that we believe that if we don't maintain superiority in our military technology context, we will all suffer.
Well, you guys have harnessed AI to remove some of the friction on the battlefield, and it's been really game-changing. Of course, last week, Senator Chuck Schumer invited top 10.
It's obviously a big debate, and I can understand it from both sides, right? Some people are looking at it and they're like, why do we keep funding this Ukraine situation, right? Sending, obviously, so much money and resources to Ukraine for them to fight, obviously, Russia. And obviously, if we didn't help them, I think the outcome would have been very different. Let's just put it that way, right? And so some people are saying that, right? Other people are saying, well, we need to. It's a must. That shouldn't even be for consideration, because if it wasn't for us, obviously Russia would have made a lot more progress than they've made in regards to that situation. So I can see it from both sides. I don't have a super strong opinion. I think it's a tough decision either way. You don't fund Ukraine. I think that leads to potential problems. I think you do fund Ukraine. It leads to potential problems as well, right? Including those resources we could potentially use in the states that we're not using. So I look at it from kind of both sides, but I understand some people are really on one side or the other when it comes to this issue. Let me know in the comment section if you have a strong opinion either way, or you're kind of a little more in the middle land like me.
Leaders, you included to the Senate, and there was a behind closed doors conversation about sort of guardrails or ring fencing as far as regulation is concerned of AI. And this isn't necessarily with the battlefield, but perhaps in the enterprise world or social media, et cetera. There were no independent scientists, as we understand it, in the room. And there were some complaints that that's almost like letting the fox guard the hen house. You guys are capitalists, and that's understandable. You're in it to make money. And we've seen in the past where there was digging in heels with the social media guys, Zuckerberg, obviously Elon Musk, and everybody else in there. They did not want to see regulation. So what is the answer to that? Don't you think that there should be some independent voices?
Well, of course, no one believes you when you're making money that you'll argue against your pocketbook. Let me argue against my pocketbook. I think we do need regulation. We need regulation to prevent the risk to our civilization should AI become uncontrollable. We need some form of regulation to make sure that governance ensures the privacy of our data, for example, in healthcare context, that reduces abuses that include discrimination. It is true that I have a capital interest, but I would say my primary interest and the interest I advocated for in that room were about national security. And I did not advocate purely for buying Palantir, although...
The one guy I don't understand how and why he was in that room, I'll just be completely honest with you guys, Bill Gates. Like, what is Bill Gates doing there? He hasn't been the CEO or even very involved in Microsoft in decades, literally decades, okay? And I'm just like, what is Bill Gates doing in that room? Like what are we talking about here? Like, just because he's super rich and he used to be the CEO of Microsoft 100 years ago doesn't mean he should be in that room. Like, I just found that comical. Like, seriously?
We obviously, in my view, have the best software products in the world. I advocated for more. Well, we don't have to advocate.
Satya Nadella should absolutely be in that room. He's the current Microsoft CEO, right?
true. That would be a legitimate pushback. But it's I advocated for reducing exports of our technology to adversarial countries, for requiring every enterprise in America to sell their technology to the DoD. So no more of this BS. I make a ton of money in America, but I can't somehow work with the DoD. And an intellectual engagement on these ethical issues. And it is true that there are conflicts of interest, no doubt. But it's also true you need the technical experts on this. And one of the ways you prove you're a technical expert on technology is building something that works. And something that works in this context is very, very valuable. So you are going to need people who've actually built things. Now, I personally think my impression of the room is there were a lot of independent data ethics experts in the room who were not capitalists and don't intend to become capitalists. And I think Leader Schumer did a really good job of bringing people in a room who otherwise would never be there. But of course, yeah.
You were seated next to Elon Musk. A lot has been made about that. And Palantir's warfare system uses this Meta constellation platform, which basically tasks hundreds and hundreds of satellites to get their imagery and then feed that down to the battlefield. I'd just like to know, are you still using Starlink? I know you have before. That's Elon Musk's SpaceX satellite constellation. And I ask that because he's kind of fanboyed over, Vladimir Putin. He said some very, very sort of lovely things about that autocrat. It's a little disturbing, especially considering Putin has been somebody, again, free speech. I get Elon can talk about that, but you're still using the Starlink satellites?
Yes. I have a variant view on this. If you go to a surgeon, you don't agree with them, and they're the best surgeon, you still go to them. And I know Elon. I like him. And I think he's a super important entrepreneur. We don't have to agree on everything. His products work. I am in the business of delivering. You could ask him, will you stop using Palantir because CARP is going to support Ukraine? I will use the best products available on the market to help our allies and hurt our adversaries. And for me, if you're supplying the product, I will use it, and you do not have to agree with me on as long as the technology is reliable on the battlefield. Okay. And I'm very happy to fight you intellectually over a cup of coffee, a beer, or a run.
Okay.
A run? Dang, Carp. Okay, you're crazy. And Lord knows Elon Musk ain't doing no damn run with you, Carp. Okay, that man ain't gonna run anywhere. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so. Interesting. I appreciate his thoughts there, and I definitely appreciate his last thought there about, as a business person, you're going to use what's the best product. You're going to have different viewpoints of people, right? But I feel like there's a problem definitely in society where a lot of people view, like, if this person has a different view on this thing, don't associate with them, don't talk to them, don't use their business or service or whatever. And I just think that's a little ridiculous. Like, you're going to have a lot of things you disagree with a lot of people on. And if you're always taking that approach, you're only going to be like kind of a little bit sheepish, where you're only going to think one way all the time. You got to be able to look at it all different ways. In my personal opinion, that shows a level of intelligence, in my opinion, is being able to see it from multiple different sides and not just want to be stuck in your way and like my team's the best and no one else matters and this is the only way it's going to be. And it's like, view it a little higher level. Okay, put your feet in the other person's shoes. And anyway, alrighty, so let's talk about Palantir's stock price here for a moment, okay? So obviously it's been a tremendous year for Palantir's stock price. It's sitting at 121% gain. The stock certainly has had weakness recently. I mean, that baby hit right about $20 and it just bounced down. It's about $14 here today, okay? So I think there's going to be a couple things that really determine where the stock price goes over this next 6 to 12 months, in my personal opinion, okay? One is going to be commercial growth. Everybody really wants to see that commercial growth. And what is AIP doing for this business? If they're not making direct money from AIP, are we attracting a lot more customers? My personal opinion is in 2024, we're going to see an acceleration of Palantir's growth rates. That's my personal opinion on that. I believe with how much customer interest they have for AIP, I believe Palantir is going to be able to sell Foundry and other products and potentially even make money up from AIP over time. And I believe we're going to start to see that revenue hit in 2024. And I believe you'll see an acceleration of growth rates in 2024. That's my personal opinion. That does not mean 2023. If it happens in 2023, it would actually be a surprise to me. And that would certainly be a great catalyst if we see a major re-acceleration of growth in 2023. Okay. The second thing is, and this matters significantly, probably even more to the stock price, as sad as it sounds, but S&P 500 inclusion. It looks like we're probably going to have that happen at some point in the next few quarters here. Let's just call it that. It could happen in the next quarter, it could happen in the next few quarters, but I'll tell you it's likely happening, S&P 500 inclusion. And when that day does come, it's definitely going to be a great thing for Palantir. It's going to be a run up into the inclusion. Once we get into the S&P 500, then there will be another likely run up because essentially then you have all these funds and folks that need to buy Palantir at that point in time because then they're in the S&P 500. So yeah, it'll definitely be an exciting thing. So that's kind of my opinion. I see more upside than downside for Palantir stock over this next, we can just call it 6 to 12 months. If the market tanks, could Palantir get hit? Sure, absolutely. But you really need the market to tank in a significant way to hold the stock back, in my opinion. I think it's in a pretty good spot for this next 6 to 12 months between those two factors I just talked about there. So Palantir stock. Oh, Palantir. Well, this stock fell about 2.7% back into the $14 range here today. Hearing what came out of the Fed here today is not the best thing when it comes to longer duration assets such as Palantir. But do remember, when it comes to Palantir, this kind of benefits them, I think, pretty well, because think about it, right? If the Fed's going to keep rates higher for longer, well, guess what that's going to mean? That's going to mean treasuries are going to yield higher for longer as well, okay? Which bodes well for Palantir because they're actually making a bunch of money right now with all the cash they have in treasuries. So, you can look at these things both ways. If you got money in a savings account, if you got money in a CD account, if you own a stock like Palantir that's making a bunch of money from money in treasuries right now, right? What you actually heard from the Federal Reserve today was actually fairly good news for you, at least in the short term. We'll see how it all plays out long term, right? Big recession's not a great thing if that ever comes.